Okay, so what we're going to end up taking a look at now is this idea of doing a little bit of Git workflow with FSG. So right now, just to see where we are, here's our actual deployed application. And let's actually run things locally. So take a look here, the npm start. Just to make sure that things are running locally. So we've got localhost. Okay, so we've got our application here. It's running. What's sort of interesting about this is that we could actually start our Git workflow without even having our application run. And so when we end up doing the workflow, what we're going to do is we will go ahead and think about some kind of feature that we're going to add to our application. So let's just say that for our workflow, I'm going to have Northwind have an employee. So there's going to be some sort of employee model that I'm going to end up setting up. So in order to do that and not necessarily have to mess around with our master branch, easiest thing to do is to go in here, and a couple of commands here we could end up using to do this, but an easy command is to check out and actually create a branch at the same time. And I'll put my initials here, and we'll say that we're going to create employee model. And that's not npm, of course. So this is going to be Git. So now I'm on this new branch. I can just do a git.status, make sure that this is clean. And I'm going to be working off this branch. There really is only 2 files that I'm going to have to end up changing here. But let's actually go through the process of thinking about how we can end up doing this by doing some testing. So right now we actually have a gulp task where we could run gulp and we could say test server JS. And this is using a gulp Mocha plugin, and this is going to end up running our server-side tests. This is good, and it'll work out for us here. But one of the things that I want to do is I actually want to be able to run this continuously. And I also would like to possibly just look at one test at a time. So there's actually 2 server tests that are running here. There's one for user, and there's one for this members only test. And let's say that I just wanted to test out this members route. I wouldn't really have an easy way of doing this. I'm sure there's a way to do it, and we could, investigate this. But one of the other things is just to realize that, gulp is great, and there's a lot of things you can do. It's very, very good at sort of dealing with dependencies of different tasks that you end up using. But one thing that we could always do here is that we could go to our package JSON file and put a thing here. We could say test dev server. And we can actually use NodeMon. And with NodeMon, we can go to our node modules. We could look in our bin, and we can run Mocha, and we could specify that the tests that we want to run are going to be inside this test directory, server, star.js. This is really not all that different than what we have here, but again, it just also shows you that it's not all that tricky in terms of running these tests. You could run it through gulp, but if you either run into a problem with gulp or any other reason, you could always just have a task. It's not that complicated to run these tests. And this is pretty much doing the same thing that we're doing here. So again, running NodeMon, I wanted to watch this process. This is going to allow me to do basically have this continuously run. And now if I went over here and I said npm run, what do we call it? We said test dev server. Let's change the name here. Let's say test server dev. So if I do that, these tests should pretty much run the same way, and that's great. Now it's actually waiting for any changes here. But the advantage that this gives me is that I could really sort of lessen the noise a little bit by piping into this npm run. And so what I want to do is I want to, when the command runs, this test server dev, I want to pipe in something to say, hey, look, only look at a particular test. I could do that by doing a dash dash and then grep, and if I say members, it should only run the members route, okay? Or if I were to say users or user, what it does, it goes and looks at the description for the test, and again, it just makes it a little bit easier when you're just want to run a particular test. And so right now, what I can do here is, again, just in terms of Git workflow, we can always go over here, we look at git.status. We could actually do a commit, git.add. If I do dot, it'll stage all my changes. So again, with Git, it's a two-stage process. So if I do that, this is going to get ready for stage, and I could add it and give it a message. Created task in package JSON for server-side test. Okay. So at this point, I have this here, and let's start to talk about setting up our feature. So what we want to be able to do here is actually do something like this. So we're going to test out employees. So ideally, I want to do something like this. Right now, there's nothing. It's not going to match anything. So I'm not going to get any tests that end up running. And just as a starting point, what I'm going to do is go back over here, and I'm going to go to this user test. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to call it employee test. All right, so here's my employee model. And if I go here, I'll just change this to employee. It should pick up this change and rerun these tests. Let's see if I didn't pick that up. Let me rerun it. So here it's, again, these are not my employee tests. This is actually the test for my user. Let's go through and just have one test here. So I've got this one test that it should exist. Let me go over here, figure out where that ends. I'll go all the way up over here, and I'll get rid of these tests. By the way, you can look and see how what that user test does. It's kind of interesting. Necessarily going to need it here. A lot of stuff going on with this user test. Probably one of the more complicated models that you're going to have. And again, it's kind of nice that that's written. You don't have to go through that process with the user, and you can focus on other features. So here, I'm going to say, well, this is going to be an employee, and I expect to have a Mongoose model for my employee. So if I went back here, again, this whole idea of development, of course, this is going to break because I don't have a model registered for employee. So how do we end up doing that? Again, the nice thing about this is I actually go in and start adding features. You can see how this is set up. So if I end up, the way that the models end up getting registered, if I look in the index file here, actually under models. So if I look under models, I'll see that there's an index, and this is requiring this user. So let's just say that we expect to have employee.js file, which we don't have. Of course, this will end up breaking as well for a different reason, because it can't find that module. And we'll go over here. And again, I'm just gonna, to get this to work, I'll say employee, and we'll go in here and make this a lot easier. So there's a bunch of things here I'm not gonna need. I don't need crypto, I don't need Lodash. Let's say that employee has a, simple, employee's gonna have a first name. I'm gonna get rid of all this other stuff here. Again, you could use this to see how to, a little bit of a refresher, or see how, you know, you could end up using Mongoose, some of the more advanced features that we haven't looked at. But here's our schema. Here's our employee with this schema. And let's see if we can get a passing test. So here we're getting a little bit closer, but if we actually go in, we end up looking at our test file. I'm gonna close this, close this, close this. And the nice thing about this is that we can just have a couple of files open at a time. So the nice thing about when you're running tests, it sort of keeps you a little bit focused. And here's our test. Here's our model, but I should be testing out employee. And we've gotten our test to pass. And again, we could go over here and there would be nothing wrong with doing git.status, git.add, added an employee model. Just make it a little bit more interesting. Let's assume that we can end up adding an employee. So we could actually start out with the text. And again, you don't even have to get too fancy here. We could say describe creating an employee named Mo. And we could go over here and we could say, hey, what do we expect from this? His name is Mo. Even just looking at this one step at a time, our tests are still running here, right? It says we have a pass because nothing failed. But let's actually go and we'll make it fail. We'll go from red to green. So we'll say expect employee dot first name to equal Mo. And we don't have an employee, so that doesn't work out too well. But let's actually go and we'll set this up. We could move this into a before each, but we could also just set it up here as well. So we could say var employee equals, and if we went over here, we could end up creating our employee. Now, we could set this up, and we could say employee create first name Mo, and we know that that's going to give us a promise here, and we'll end up getting an employee back here. So if we just did this, come over here. And put this expectation here. and let's just see what happens. Now, that's fine, that passes, but it would be a little bit better if we were sort of totally clear that this is running. I mean, obviously we could do whatever we want to here and say console.log, here I am. All right, or another thing is always to go from red to green. So if we went over here and made this lowercase, oh, that's actually a good point here, right? So let's do that console again, console.log. Oh. So this is logging, but the problem is that these tests are asynchronous. So there's a couple of different things that you could do here. I think you could probably pass in done over here, in which case we're going to end up timing out, and we can end up saying, hey, look, we're ready to run our tests when we end up getting over here. And we're still timing out. So if we end up doing that, we end up calling done here, and it's kind of interesting. The reason why that didn't work before is because this was, I think basically we're running to an error here, and so we were erroring out, and so our done was never getting called. Let's just see if, yeah, so this is a little bit problematic, and really the way to do this, which is probably going to make the most sense, is to wonder if we did this and this, and we're still running into that timeout issue. So a smarter thing to do, and this is what you probably want to do with your asynchronous tests, is to do it before each. If you do it before each, you could pass it done. Let's simplify things a little bit. So our test, it should be somewhat simplistic. And so again, we're going to say, what do we expect? We expect employee, first name to equal Mo. Now, this is all done here. This should just fail. Employee is not defined. If we define our employee and we were to just make employee an object, do first name, Mo, you can get this to pass. Here we're still getting this done. It's not getting called. Let's try to figure out why. So here's our employee. Let's just do this. We have this object, first name, timing out. Oh, I know why, because we still have this done here. Okay. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Now we get this to pass, and just as a sanity check, let's make it fail and then pass. That fails and passes. Okay, obviously we want to use our actual model here. So let's go in here and we'll say employee create. We're going to create our employee, and I'm going to put this in a underscore, and we'll say employee equals employee, and now we'll call done. So now we're actually using our model, and we've got an unexpected token here. So yeah, Got that. So that works. Again, we could go from red to green. And, this is also, once you end up getting your test to pass, you could, go in here and we could end up making this change here, specifying, look at our status, git.add dot. And before you do that, you could actually do if you wanted to do a git.diff, it'll tell you what your changes are. So here I could say added a test, git.add dot. Okay. So, once you end up doing that, you have your changes here. You might look at this and say, well, did it really get saved to the database? Any number of things you could do. It's a good place to practice using Mongoose a little bit. And I could actually say return employee find one. In which case, go one step further here, just using the promise chain. Right, so once the employee ends up getting created, then I could end up doing a find one and get the employee, and say employee equals underscore employee. I can call done. And again, just running this continuously. It's nice. Let's see, now we've got an error here. And the reason why we have an error is that it's not name, it's first name. So we could create an employee, and let's say we're going to do another describe. And let's say we're going to say we have some method on our employee, say hello. So you can go over here, and what's our expectation? So let's say that we have some expectation when we tell our employee to say hello. We expect to get some message. Hi, my name is Mo. So literally we could go in here and write our expectation, say we expect message to equal my name is Mo. Of course, undefined is not going to equal that message, right? Message is not defined. And we can go over here and we'll get a different message, undefined. Expect undefined to equal that, and that's not going to work. Literally, we could go up here and we could do a copy and paste. We could always go and dry this out. Again, you shouldn't really necessarily worry that your tests are too verbose. Not really that big a deal. And this is not going to be employee. This is going to be message. And once we get our employee, we'll say message equals from our employee, say hi. So this is just going to be a message. It's not going to be asynchronous. Once we have the employee, we're going to be able to calculate this message by telling the employee to say hi. And if we go to run this, we'll get this error message. It'd be nice if we ended up, let's go over here and specify that we're going to do called done with the error here, because that's really what should be happening. Should be having an error. And let's just sort of test this out. This done should be getting called. Let's simplify it by getting this catch out of here. We should be creating the employee. We should be calling done. Expected undefined. We'll get a pass. And we'll go back and we'll end up adding the method. All right, so what we really want to have is we want to tell the employee so this is where we can take a look at our model. Again, notice we just don't have, it's not like we have a lot of things opened up at the same time. And we could say schema methods say hi. It's going to equal a function. So this is going to be acting on an instance of this model. And if we just return the string hello, it shouldn't time out, right? But it should be that it's not giving us the correct message. So what do we expect? We expect, hello, my name is, and we could add to it this first name, right? Because this is going to point to this instance of your employee. And it's not hello, but it's hi. Now this pass as well. So at this point, in terms of the Git workflow, we could end up adding this. To commit it. Again, anytime when we do this, and I had mentioned this before too, but right now we're ready to stage. We could end up undoing our changes, and I should rephrase that, not undoing them, but let's say that we wanted to maybe add something to this. We could always go backwards and say reset dot. Reset is not going to get rid of our changes, but now these changes just aren't going to be added to the next commit. So you could always end up doing that, moving from moving something out of the staged area. I really want it to be in the staged area, so I added it. Now it's ready to be committed. And I'll say, added a, say, I method with a test. So once I end up doing that, and I don't actually even have this repo up on GitHub, but one thing you could do here is that I can merge right here. Now, one of the ways that you're going to merge is you can end up putting it up on GitHub. Let's actually show that workflow. So I'm going to go over here, and let me just go to my GitHub account. So what do we call this guy? This is going to be Nwind-FSG. Nwind-FSG. We're going to create it. And I'm going to go, I have this branch here. So another thing you could always do to switch from different branches is we could check out our master branch. Here we type git.branch, and it'll show you your two branches. It shows me I'm on the master branch. And the way that this is set up here, I'm going to push my master branch. Now this is pushed. If I go back here, I can see my files that ended up getting added. And I can see that I have one branch. Now, in terms of the process of, the workflow that we're going to use, let me go back and I'm going to now check out. I don't do -B, but I'm going to check out my branch, which is going to be EK create employee model. Now I'm on this branch, and now I'm going to push this branch to the origin. Once I do that and I go back up to GitHub, I see, sort of listening for these changes, it says, well, what do you want to do here? And what I want to do is I want someone else to take a look at it and maybe give me some feedback on it. So if I go over here, and if I went here, I could see the changes that I made. Again, these aren't huge branches. You see there's a lot of code here, but most of this is test code, right? In terms of the actual application code, there's a couple of lines here that allow us to create the model. So I could end up creating this pull request. And then someone would come over and take a look at it, maybe write some comments. Don't have anyone else on here. Someone writes a +1. I could then end up merging this pull request. And now if I end up, and once you end up merging that pull request, this branch really serves no purpose. So here, I can see that I have 2 branches, but if I look at my commit history on my master branch, right, these are all the commits that I've done. And at this point, even this extraneous branch you don't really need, and I could end up removing that branch. If I had to, I could restore it, but just a little bit less noise here. So now I've just got this one branch, which is my master branch. And I ended up doing this globally. So if I go back to my master, I went over here and I would take a look at it. For instance, if I said, I went over here and looked at my package JSON, I wouldn't see this code that I wrote before. So right now I'm running locally, but I did my merge up on the server. So pretty simply, I could just say, hey, look, git.pull, pull it back from the origin. Now I could see, if I look at my log, I could see everything here. I'm working with my up-to-date branch. So this is pretty common. You're often going to want to be working. Someone's going to make changes remotely. You're going to want to, pull those changes in. And if you're on your master branch, you do a git.pull, you could end up doing that. So once that's done, I could always push this up to Heroku. It's not really going to have any real changes here because there's no front-end changes, but it shouldn't break anything. So I could say git.push Heroku master. And it should at least go in and end up building this. So I'm going to save this video up, and we'll actually look at one more testing, but we'll look at another server-side test that we could end up creating a route that we could end up testing out.